Hi, it's Lindsay McGee from 3P. In our previous video we talked about talent management, the whole subject, and we use our acronym for that, which is ASPIRE: acquisition, succession planning, improvement, retention and engagement. And we think that is the main elements of a good talent management strategy or program. And today we're going to dig in a bit more. We're going to talk about talent acquisition, the acquisition of talent. And a place to start with this is the cost of a bad hire. There are many statistics out there now telling us that the cost of a bad hire can be up to 350%. That is 350%, 350% of the annual salary of the candidate that's been brought in, and we find it's a bad hire. And just to bear in mind, this is a bad hire in the sense of they leave within the first 12 months, or you ask them to leave in the first 12 months. And also this is management, leadership and executive type roles. So the cost of a bad hire can be up to 350%. Sounds unbelievable. The reasons for that can be the direct element, which is how much does it cost to pay the salary for somebody who comes on board. Let's say they're £50,000 or $50,000. That's their annual salary. They stay for 9 months, so there's 9 months worth of salary straight away you've lost. Okay, you'll never ever get that back. You've just paid a recruiting fee to bring them on board. You've just trained and inducted them into your business. There will be some ongoing development for those individuals as well. So there's some of the direct expense. But there's also those indirect expenses as well. Those indirect expenses can be a loss in productivity of that individual compared to the previous incumbents. You can get some loss in productivity of the team as well. The team realised there's a bad fit in the organisation, and hence some lost productivity for the business. If this is a customer facing role, or in this case we're talking about managers and leaders, could be an internal customer facing role. Big teams being managed and led, there's damage to that relationship, damage to that reputation as well, and even worse if it's dealing with an external client. So we can see how the direct and indirect costs will build up pretty quickly. Another interesting statistic in there, and we've used this infographic which you see on the screen. It's from a company called REC, based in the UK, and great infographics showing you a lot of information which you can get access to. And 1 in 5 HR decision makers were not really sure how much it was costing for a bad hire. And again, that's such a worrying statistic for us to have to think about. But if we just think about this in the sense of, let's say it's 200%, makes it nice and easy, round numbers, $50,000 for the salary, and we lose 200%. Financial loss is 200%. That's £100,000 or $100,000 loss to the business, never to be claimed back again. So it's important that when we talk about acquisition, talent acquisition, that we do this right. We have a thoughtful process to do so. It's not all bad news, because there are ways and means to do this. But another thing to consider here, it's a well-known phrase in the recruiting business, and it's horns and halo effect. Now, what is the horns and the halo effect? It paints some interesting images. But we know when we meet somebody whether we like them or we don't. There's an unconscious bias that we have. We can sit in an interview, we can sit with an individual, there could be 2 or 3 people on the panel interviewing, and 2 may like the individual, 2 may not. They're not sure why, but that's the unconscious bias. So one of the things that we recommend to make sure that we don't get a bad hire is to keep that unconscious bias out of this process for as long as we can. Now, some of the reasons where we may have a bad hire: talent acquisition can be seen as expensive, time consuming, and a somewhat subjective task. All 3 of those might get us to a position where we try and fast track through and to bring somebody in without really thinking about this fully. There's a need to bring somebody in, there's an urgent need, and hence the time factor is squeezed and we bring the individual in. So the elements in there, the expensive, time-consuming, subjective task, if we go back to the cost of a bad hire, it's worthwhile to ensure that we don't have the bad hire, to take our time, because it is an expensive process when we bring talent in. We're paying $50,000, it could be $100,000 salary. We want to get the right fit for the organization. So it's advisable to take the time and advisable to take the subjectivity out. This is the unconscious bias. This is the horns and halo effect. So the way to do that is to think about every candidate who comes your way. And again, this is talent acquisition. This is not a quick fix hire to help with a particular problem in the organization. This is a long-term considered view of the talent you have in your organization and the talent you want to have in your organization. And it also starts to think about succession planning, which will be the subject of our next video, but this is now about talent acquisition. Two key things to think about. One is eligibility. To get this right, we need to know essentially the CV, the resume of this individual. Have they got the knowledge? Have they got the skills to do this particular role? And bear in mind, we're talking about management, we're talking about leaders, and we're talking about executives. Have they got the knowledge and the skills to do this? Pretty simple to get a hold of that using whichever means, if it's just paper CVs or some form of screening process. It's easy enough to get to that point. The more difficult thing is when we start looking at what we call suitability. Have they got the necessarily behavioral makeup to perform at this new management, leadership or executive level? In coaching circles and executive coaching circles, it's known that as you progress up the ranks of management and leadership, it's not so much about your knowledge and skills, it's your behaviors which will take you to the next levels and give you the success that you need, because you're dealing with teams then, bigger teams, and trying to improve the business on that basis. So the two things to have a look at is eligibility and suitability. You could think about those in the terms of IQ and EQ. IQ is intellectual intelligence, where this is a person's intellectual capability to deal with the knowledge and the skills for that particular role. And the emotional intelligence, the EQ, this is the behavioral dynamic that they bring to the organization. It means that they can work well for themselves, with others, they can read emotions, and they can bring that to bear in team settings and business settings to improve the business and improve client relationships. So eligibility, suitability, IQ, EQ. So lots to consider. The EQ element, again, there are many ways to do this. This is still trying to keep that horns and halo effect out of this talent acquisition process and trying to make sure that we've got the right candidates sitting in front of us. EQ, we can measure EQ. Again, you can check yourselves on Google. There's many tools to do this. There are many good talent analytic tools to do this as well, where we can look at the eligibility and suitability, and it can be done on a system, it can be done remotely. You're not seeing the individual. I can't recommend highly enough that we keep this unconscious bias out of this interview process for as long as we can and use the technology that's available to do so. So just to round off on this element. So we're looking for eligibility and we're looking for suitability. We're looking for the knowledge and the skills, and we're looking for the behaviors as well, the behavioral dynamics. You could argue it's the IQ and the EQ. So talent management and talent acquisition, it's an ongoing process of attracting, recruiting, inducting and making use of the right talent in line with your business objectives and goals. And the more considered you can be here, and the longer you can wait to keep the subjectivity out, the better chance you can bring in a candidate who will be a good fit for the organisation and for the objectives and the goals, and will be retained in the business as well. And to do this, you have to think about, well, how are we going to design our talent acquisition process? First thing is, what is the diagnostic? What are we looking for? What type of candidate are we looking for? So we need the job description, we need the knowledge and the skills, and we also need the behaviours that we're looking for. Every company will have some form of vision or values or some mission statement, which again is part of that diagnostic phase. We're looking for somebody who can work well with that vision or those values or that mission or the culture of the business. So you've got to think about that cautiously. And then from there, start to design the type of program you want for the acquisition of that talent. Now, are you going to use a job board, or are you going to use a particular recruiter to do this, or are you going to use LinkedIn to do this? You need a feed of suitable candidates. But the feed is one thing, the screening of those candidates is something else. That's where you get into delivery. How will you do that? Will you let LinkedIn do that? Will you let the job board do that? Will you let the recruiter do that? And the answer has to be, to some extent, yes. So there's your first filter. But how can you filter to the next level and then the next level? So you're getting very close to that right candidate who you then want to bring into an interview situation and have a more robust conversation around their eligibility and around their suitability. And also, yeah, do we like them or don't we like them? We're going to bring in that unconscious bias, that horns and halo effect at that point in time. So lots to consider on that element. So in the means of a proposal, when you're thinking about talent acquisition, there's a lovely little risk map that we use just to think clearly about the candidates that we'll have in front of us, or when we're working with clients, what they have in front of them. This is a risk map, a talent risk map, and we're using eligibility and we're using suitability. As you can see, up the vertical is eligibility, along the horizontal is suitability. And the key phrases is a thing to look out for. The strong fit candidate, the one that is going to look, feel, sound, everything is going to be the right candidate for you. Strong fit, high eligibility, high knowledge and skills, high IQ, and strong on the suitability, the behaviours or the EQ side as well. Again, bear in mind this is management, leadership and executive type positions we're looking at. And again, just to look at others on there, if you've got somebody with high suitability, so the EQ is looking good, the behaviour is looking good, but the knowledge and the skills might not be quite there. Now again, it'll depend on the particular role. It's easier to probably train for knowledge and skills, yeah, than it is for suitability and EQ. So sometimes that can be a managed risk. You know that they do not have the knowledge and the skills, but we can bring in some formal training for that. But we've got a great candidate who's strong suitability and strong emotionally and behaviourally. And think about the other categories in there. If you've got somebody with high eligibility, so the knowledge and skills are great, and again it's management, leadership and executive positions. If the suitability is low, high maintenance. These will be an emotional nightmare for your business. And then the final section is someone who's low eligibility and low suitability. Hopefully they never come to the interview stage. Yeah? Even though they may be a great person and you might like them, they're not a good fit for your organization. That's the risk map that we use. We use technology to help us assess on the eligibility and also on the suitability, and looking for EQ scores as well. There are many tools that you can use. I think it's incumbent upon the organization to look to find the best fit, and you could be using tools now. Can you use them in a slightly different way? So you're looking for eligibility, you're looking for suitability to get a good fit, not just for the organization now, This is talent we're talking about. The talent has to be part of your pipeline for the future. Can they fit the business in the future as well? And I guess that's where we come down to the manage risk also. Maybe interviewing somebody which knowledge and skills is not quite there, but their emotional intelligence means that they can flex, they can adapt to the changing environment of your organization and help you in the future, and hence part of your talent pool. So just to wrap up for today, so it's a call to action. There are 3 elements that we like to see in a good talent acquisition conversation and process. First one is, how are you attracting? How are you attracting the right candidates? And this is a thought process. When we're recruiting, and we're recruiting for positions which need to be filled quickly and just help us through some problems, lower level in the organizations, it's easier to do, okay? And we'll look at the screening process in a much more probably knowledge and skills basis and not so much on the behaviors basis. This is management, leadership and executives. So we're looking to recruit talent. How do we attract that talent? How do you tell the world that you're looking for talent? And really, you need to be hiring all the time. It's a good mantra to put out there, that you're recruiting, you're hiring, you're looking for talent, because talent will gravitate to that. So how are you going to attract that talent is the first thing. So think about that and then understand your why. It's all part of that diagnostic and design of your talent acquisition process. Understand why you're doing it. If it's short-term hire, fine. If it's a long-term talent acquisition program, then you've got a different why and a different design to your program. Second thing is the recruitment element. We keep out of the recruitment element the unconscious bias, horns and halo effect for as long as we can. Technology can help us do that. Screening process can help us do that. So we can make a very considered decision when we do have somebody in for interview. Keep out that unconscious bias, that horns and halo effect. And also look for emotional intelligence. If you don't have any of the diagnostics to help you do this, or technology, at the very least, look for a measure of their emotional intelligence. It will tell you a lot about how they can behave now and in the future for your organization. And again, give you a lot of substance to say, okay, I might like the candidate, they've got good knowledge and skills, but behaviorally and emotionally, I know they're not going to cope with the challenges of the growing business. So first thing, how do we attract? Second thing is recruit. And the third thing is about this induction and the onboarding. This is also part of the talent acquisition process. You've got time, even when the person's in the organization, to make up your mind, to do some 360, get their peers, get their subordinates, get their superiors to come and feed in very quickly. It's a golden window to make that final decision if you have to. And it's much easier to let somebody go at their probation periods than it is once they're a fully fledged employee and maybe causing some of that indirect damage to your business. So just to, in summary, the cost of a bad hire in talent acquisition can be up to 350% of the candidate's salary. Second thing, horns and halo effect. Keep that out of your acquisition process for as long as you can. Third thing, you're looking for eligibility and suitability. You're looking for the intelligence and emotional intelligence. Yeah, you're looking for knowledge and skills, but also behavior. This is management, leadership, and executives that we're acquiring into the business. Have yourself a risk map. Think about people on the base of a risk map. And even if you don't have technology to measure this, then okay, you bring the subjectivity in. 5 people on an interview team, or 5 people in an organization, just to see the candidates and say eligibility score, suitability score, and are we saying the same things? Are we seeing a strong fit, or are we seeing a weak fit? And then from there, 3 things that you must think about: how you attract, how you recruit, and how you induct your talent. So thank you very much for listening today. Our next video will be on the subject of succession planning.